let's talk about mindset initially. It's getting your head in the right place. I think one of the problems that young professionals in all specialisation adopt is they think they're lesser than. And the tendency is to think, well, they know more, they're smarter, they're more capable, they're all these things that I'm not. There's this reluctance to actually take any action at all. But we're all making it up as we go along. No one's got all the answers. We're all human. So my point is, what's the worst thing that's going to happen if you reach out to someone? Why wouldn't you do it?
Mark Brownley, welcome to the Entrepreneurial Engineer Podcast. It's a pleasure having you on.
Thanks, Darren. Great to be very graciously accepted the invitation, and always happy to talk about things engineering and entrepreneurship. So let's do it.
Excellent, mate. So, Mark, tell me, what mission are you on right now in a nutshell? What gets you up in the morning? What are you working on right now?
Look, in simple terms, I like helping people. People ask me, why do I like doing that? It was tough for me when I graduated, and life was miserable, not because I'd finished, but because I didn't know where to go. So, and there wasn't anyone you could really reach out to. I mean, I have a dad who was a mechanical engineer, but obviously different generations, different challenges, all that sort of thing. So there was really no guidance. It was, here's your degree and good luck, have a nice life. So it was a bit disorienting, and it was hard to break through, like a lot of people experience. Going through that personally, and the scars that it left, not deep emotional scars. I mean, people deal with real challenges and trauma in their life, and I'm not suggesting it was anything like that, but it was frustrating. I think there's that expectation that when you finish, you just roll naturally into the start of your career, and it just builds from there. But as a chem eng, I was always keen growing up in Melbourne to get down onto the strip, the alternate petrochemicals, and that strip down there on the western side of the city over the West Gate. And that didn't happen. I thought that would just be a fait accompli. You do your degree and you can get a job with whoever you want. It didn't work out like that. And I started at Honeywell, which, building systems and coding and all that sort of thing. So it was an awesome start to a career, but it was more happenstance than anything else. And I promised myself at that point that once, I'd been around the place a while, racked up a bit of experience, knew a bit of people, knew a few people, that I want to help some others make that transition a lot easier. So that's basically my full-time job these days. And it is the thing that gets me up in the morning, and, I lean in on every day. I don't do things at scale at this point, but I like helping people think through career opportunities, but more importantly, break through. I think this is the thing. Most of my work, in fact, all of my work is US based these days. I don't do anything in Australia anymore. And it's a focus on the US tech hubs. So think Silicon Valley, think some of the fringe hubs like Charlotte, North Carolina, Buffalo, New York, but also the Bay Area and San Francisco and New York City itself, where they have developer software engineering communities. They have lots of really smart people pouring out of some of the best universities in the world, sending off 1,000 applications into the void and hearing nothing. So that's where most of my energy is invested these days, and I love doing it. And like you, it's sharing that expertise. You learn a few things over the journey, and the beauty of social media is obviously you can educate the world. Well, that's the theory anyway. Maybe 2 or 3 people that might read the post.
What's the post?
I just run daily LinkedIn posts that talk about.
The posts. Sorry,
yeah, the post as in
like the
my post, not the post as in the Washington Post. Although it's another successful engineer too. So yeah, just banging stuff out there, and hopefully it lands and makes life a bit easier for a few people, a few steps behind.
So tell me about what was tough when you were starting out, and then how did that form those scars that you're talking about? What is maybe something that you took some reflection from that really shaped who you are or where you're going?
Well, look, what was tough was that I had expectations, as I mentioned before, that you just roll naturally from a 4-year degree into the career of your choice. I didn't really understand this concept of building relationships with people, with learning about industries, learning about sectors, specializations. I thought it would be just a natural progression, and it wasn't. It was like hitting a brick wall. So here am I, it was 1987. You're sending, remember letters? stamps.
Yeah.
So you'd send letters and stamps with CVs off to a range of organisations and companies. Some you'd hear back from and others you wouldn't. And I had a good mate of mine who finished up in investment banking. So there's something else that engineers can do, which I highly encourage. You retire very early with big yachts. He was fielding phone calls from the refineries and the big refiners at the time, think the Shells, the BPs, etc. And here I was checking the mailbox every day and nothing was landing. So I thought, hang on, there's something going on. How come he's getting phone calls and I'm checking the post box every day and there's nothing? So I started to learn quickly that it was more than just send an application off and hope. So there had to be a better way. There was a system. We're all engineers, so there was a system that I wasn't familiar with. And obviously now we call that relationship building. People like the word networking, which I don't use. I talk about relationships rather than networks. And I talk about sponsors rather than mentors. So I like to go deeper on these things. But it was clearly that gap between, well, here's someone that's got an engineering degree, which you feel really good about, right? And all your parents and your friends and your family, and they rally around. You feel like $1 million, like you've achieved something, and you have. It's a big deal, obviously. What you don't realise at the time is you're like every other person that's graduating in your year with a degree. And then every other university in the state, and then every other university in every other state. So you know what? You look exactly the same as everyone else. So it's no wonder that you're not getting picked. Why would they pick you? What's special and unique about you? Now, if you've got an Olympic gold medal you can hang around your neck, or you've built an amazing startup, or you hold some other world record, that's handy. Clearly, it creates a point of differentiation. And these are the things I talk a lot about now. But back then, I didn't have a clue. So it made perfect sense to me that I was just bumping around, waiting to get lucky. And I did. I talk a lot about that. And that's what it was. It was luck. And that's what got me on my way. So these days, I like to talk more about engineered systems that give you what we talk about a lot in the US. They talk about signal invisibility a lot. So it's a point of differentiation. Once you graduate, and for the rest of your career, you're not in the engineering business, you're in the marketing business if you want your career to grow. So you've got to get very familiar with those marketing concepts. You become the product, you become the service, and you've really got to fine-tune those skills.
Yeah, look, I could see there is a lot of, graduates, young engineers out there that they do get to this point. They're just like, yep, great, I'm out there, world, here I am, and it's crickets. How do you, or how maybe did you take those learnings from, how did you actually go, okay, here's a gap. As a young engineer, how do you build those relationships? And then maybe further, how do you become unique? Like, I use the word niche, and we were just to release, find your niche. How as a young engineer, what's your advice for a young engineer to build relationships and be more unique to stand out?
Well, I think there's a few things. One, let's talk about mindset initially. It's getting your head in the right place. I think one of the problems that young professionals in all specializations, including engineering, adopt is they think they're lesser than. So you got someone up here who's the CEO, and you got someone down here who happens to have just graduated from university. So there might be a 20, 30-year gap. And the tendency is to think, well, they know more, they're smarter, they're more capable, they're all these things that I'm not. And by the way, if I reach out to them, guess what? They're going to ghost me, they're going to ignore me, they're going to think I'm stupid, I'm going to ask dumb questions. It's all of these things that go on in the mind. Now, this isn't reality, but it's what we tell ourselves and what we're trained to do, because it's a very, we all know it's a very hierarchical structure.
Yeah.
And so there's this reluctance to actually take any action at all. Why would you go and reach out to the CEO of an ASX listed company? That'd be the most stupid thing you could do in the world. Why? And I posted something on that long ago. I like this metaphor. Think about it. The CEO puts out the bins on bin night. They empty the dishwasher. They've got to ferry the kids. They've got to clean up cat puke. Whatever it happens to be, these are real human beings. They're just normal people.
Yeah.
So I think you've got to get yourself in the game. Here's the CEO of an ASX listed company, and here's you.
Yeah.
Different set, different experiences, different skills, different backgrounds, sure. But we're all making it up as we go along. No one's got all the answers.
Yeah. We're all human.
We're all human. So my point is, what's the worst thing that's going to happen
Yeah.
if you reach out to someone? Either they ignore you or they say, no, that's the worst thing. You don't get wet. So why wouldn't you do it, is my argument. Don't wait 10, 20 years to do it. I've always said, the first thing you should do when you get on a campus, and probably while you're still at school, is start those conversations. And you probably know yourself, when you've been in, senior positions and you get your hands on the levers, how many people from universities or early stages of career come and knock on your door? I only need one hand in a 35-year engineering career to identify those people. Now, I can remember most of them because they're unique. No one ever does it. And then everyone wonders why. They're looking around in 20 years, they're getting up in the morning and doing the same thing every day. They're driving back and forth to work, and it's the mighty career that could have been. So it's simply about starting a conversation with another human being. And guess what? We're all gifted in that. We've got family, we've got friends, we've got teammates, colleagues, whatever it is. We know how to start conversations. Just do it.
Yeah. No, I mean, your point about the CEO, the levels, you bang on, we're all just human at the end of the day. And you're right. The worst thing that can happen is you get a no, but you never know. You might get I don't have something, but I know someone that does, or,
Exactly.
that reach. And you're right. I think a lot of young engineers and young professionals, they are scared. They are thinking, oh, they won't listen, or why would I reach out to them? But I've found in my career that engineers are very generous with their time. I always try to get back to people as soon as I can, and I think we always want to help the underdog. And I hope that, there's some young engineers that, take some thought about what you've just said.
I hope so too.
Just never know.
It'll make a big difference in their career. It'll make a big difference in their life. I think the other thing I'd add to it, though, is you've got to be consistent. It's no good having 3 conversations in first year, 1 in second year, 2 in third year, and a couple in fourth year, and expect the rest of your career to unfold. It has to be a practiced, consistent effort over time to build genuine relationships with people. And you and I both know it's about doing things for others with the expectation of nothing in return. So it's not gratuitous, I want something, I need something. It's what can you do for others? So it's that servant leadership concept practiced in the context of building genuine relationships with people. And that's how life opens up. It's actually, this stuff's not hard. I think the other thing, though, is in Australia, we're particularly challenged. As I said, all of my work is US based. They're very different cultures. So Australia is very traditional and very hierarchical. So, the idea of approaching someone more senior is very scary, very intimidating. You'd never do it. You've got to wait your turn. In the US, it's the Wild West. If you don't get on LinkedIn and find people, then guess what?
Yeah.
Someone else is going to do it. And I think and I think in Australia, it's to the young professional and the graduate engineer's detriment. And this is what I love about the stuff you're doing. It creates that entrepreneurial mindset. There are no rules in professional life. Now, when I say that, there are standards of behavior, of course, and codes of conduct. I just put that to one side. But in terms of how we go about the business of engineering, adherence to codes is critically important. We don't want things blowing up or bridges falling down. So I get that. But if there are no rules, so why do we adopt these structures and these things that we can't approach senior people, or we can't seek new information, or we can't move? The other thing I find really unique about Australia is, very again different to the US, is everyone wants a job within a 5 kilometre radius of home. No one ever wants to move, and they're always worried about the commute. So if you move from Sydney to Melbourne or Adelaide to Brisbane or Perth to Kalgoorlie, big deal. I think this is the other thing. We're a very small little dot. So the jobs are somewhere else, and so is the experience, and so is the cachet.
Yeah. So
there's lots of things you can be doing that there aren't too many, as a chemical engineer, there aren't too many oil refineries that are built in the backyard. So, and oil refineries aren't such a big deal these days, the way they,
Yeah.
so, I think there are lots of things we can be doing that are almost countercultural in Australian context, which means you need to surround yourself with people that think like that rather than a traditional hierarchical sense, because then you will wait forever and look around 30 years later and said, oh, what happened there?
What happened there? You mentioned a few things, and I'd like to dive into the parallels with the States, because that for me is key around maybe not just about engineering, but you talked about the layers and maybe just more that entrepreneurial mindset. You mentioned the word visibility, which I want us to dig down on, but signal. I never really heard the word signal. So can you maybe unpack that for me around visibility, maybe some of those differences, and what does signal mean, and how can we learn from that here in Australia?
Yeah, it's a word that is used a lot in the US. Visibility, obviously, we use that here too, but
Yeah.
signal I'll delve into a little bit. I'll use a very simple example, but it's very illustrative. In the US, they don't call them CVs; they call them resumes. So you start using the word CV over there, people sort of look at you blind. They go. So think about a CV, a resume. They have recruiters and they have what they refer to as hiring managers. So anyone in a business that will bring someone into that business, as a software engineer or developer, where I spend most of my time. But it doesn't matter. It can be a civil engineer, electrical engineer, mech engineer here. So the concept's the same. So you can take a CV and you can write a list of things that you've done and you send it off as your application and hope that someone rings you back. A list, as you and I both know, and again, it's simplistic but to illustrate the point, a list of duties and responsibilities means absolutely nothing to a hiring manager or someone that wants to achieve an outcome in a business. I mean, engineers go and design things and build things in organizations, but organizations are businesses, they have to make profits. So you need a business mind. So whatever you're doing needs to ensure that you're serving the needs of clients, customers, to ensure that the profits are there to continue to invest in the business and pay you fair market rate. So just listing duties and responsibilities sends zero signal to someone that's got the power to hire. Someone that fills that resume or that CV with clues that they create value and they see a future is a very different proposition. And that's what sends signal. So if your CV says to me, here's a guy that's done all this amazing stuff, the needle's really moved, the CV's full of numbers rather than words, and applicant tracking systems or the ATSs, all the CVs and resumes need to pass so that PARSE, so that it needs to resonate with a machine, but then it needs to resonate with a human being, and it's the signal that will cut through. So in other words, we always talk about customizing CVs.
Yeah.
Not many people actually get it, and fewer even do it. They just keep banging the same things off and wonder why nothing changes.
Yeah.
So, call it 80% of the CV remains the same, but 20% is all about them. So when a hiring manager or a recruiter is looking at a CV, the signal they get is this person is already on the team. They understand the organization that they are applying to, and it's relevant. I can see it in their CV, the things they've done, the projects they've delivered, the value they've created, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
That's what I mean by signal, but it goes beyond that too. I mean, for example, if you're building something, again, think software engineers, but if you're building something and you're posting about it, I remember they have things like GitHub where it's a portfolio that holds all their projects. But anything, even if you're a civil engineer, a mech engineer, things that are visible to people become compelling. And I say this all the time. If you're building something in an Australian context, put it up on LinkedIn. Oh, I couldn't put a post on LinkedIn because if you put a post on LinkedIn, someone might see you. And?
Yeah.
So how many people post on LinkedIn? About 1% or something, 1%. And 99% are lurkers.
Yeah, that's scary.
But the civil engineer that puts up their project and what they're learning and what they've learned from the failures, because we all stuff things up, they're the ones that stand out. So when you and I are sitting down there on a hiring panel, we're going, Oh yeah, I remember Darren. He was the guy who was building the bridge in Lithgow or wherever it was.
Yeah.
Bingo. So
Yeah.
you've got that memory so it's all this sort of stuff. So it's multifaceted, as we all know when we've been around a while. But it's taking every advantage to send a signal that you are the person that should be employed for that particular role, not just banging off applications into the void that look exactly the same as everyone else.
Yeah. I really that whole piece around signals, what they look like, project data. Like, I'm an engineer. I love data. I love metrics. I love numbers. My CV has a ton of numbers in it. I love that because when I see that, it's something I can go, I can relate to it. It's a number. It's factual. It's got some metric behind it that gives you a detailed understanding of what it is. With that and young engineers, how do they create those signals? I talk a lot about storytelling, and I feel like you sort of merging on this, talking about failures and stories, and I talk a lot about engineers and storytelling. But as a young engineer, I don't have any stories, or I don't know what stories I need to tell, and I don't have those signals, or maybe I do, but I can't flesh them out. How would you advise someone to think of what those examples might be so they can either tell the stories or put those signals down?
I think you're really onto something with storytelling. I talk about this a lot in the work that I do and have done over many years. I think it's an extraordinary superpower for an engineer, but any professional. Some years ago now, I spent a bit of time training with NIDA, not in New South Wales, but doing their open adult courses. I've got an interest in acting and performance. My brother's actually a muso, so I'm not that way talented, but I do like the idea of performance in professions because it enables you to get a message out and get cut through. We all think about it in a movie, obviously, but I got really interested in storytelling, and I thought, how do I improve this in my own life and build out my professional toolkit? And acting immediately came to mind because of the general interest I've got. So I started to pursue this whole concept of acting, storytelling, and expression from the point of view of communicating, complex technical information, but getting cut through and buy in with it. But it's also in things like industrial relations and all that sort of good stuff. When you dust up with the unions, it's really helpful there too. So it's a real art. So in other words, you can go and educate yourself, public speaking, acting, whatever it is, that human expression. I think this is something that really, really will accelerate a young career. So you can educate yourself that way. I think the other thing is, and I've said this a lot, young engineers spend too much time around young engineers, which is nice because we like hanging out with our mates, but there's always people a few steps ahead. And my encouragement is always, and people sort of look at me with this wry smile and the sort of light goes on, well, why don't you find someone that's done it or is doing what you want to do? Go and talk to them. Don't ask for a job. You can try that too, but the answer is usually no initially. You can get lucky, so I wouldn't rule it out. But it's about learning. What happened to them? It's like reading a biography in real time. And people, you and I both know, people have these inflection points in their careers. Things go up and things go down. Why is that? So it's almost like, it's a technique I call career mapping, but it's basically studying the career paths of others that have trod well-worn paths. If you think about startups, they iterate. So you come up with an idea based on market signals, you build something, the MVP, you put it to market, and then you get feedback and you iterate on it. It's like designing something too, right? So I think these, similarly with learning about other people and career trajectories, what is it that changed? What did they do? How did they grow? And then you can bring that back in and you can start to form your own story. I think it's a very helpful construct. I mean, your story is uniquely yours, obviously.
Yeah.
You're getting better at telling it, and you can educate yourself around that, but also understanding the career paths and the life path of others. Remembering, of course, that your job is part of your life, not the other way around. So I think just expanding your horizons and being much more interesting than just getting up and going to work every day. It's a big, bad world out there. It's a lot of fun. It's a rock and roll and ride. So you got to blow things up from time to time. Yeah, it could be
Yeah.
a change in job, sector, responsibilities, go backwards to go forwards, move states, move countries. These are the people that are inherently interesting. And these are the CVs that as a senior person you gravitate toward. If you sat in the same office doing the same thing for 20 years, you're not that interesting. I'm not saying that's not right for some people, and there's no value judgment in that. But
Sure.
if you want to do more, if you want to blow the doors off, then it's really important that you've got a story to tell and people will listen, and buried in that story will always be signal.
36% of listeners won't subscribe to this podcast, and that's a real shame. If you want to help me share the stories and help others learn and grow, then please like and subscribe. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you about the NIDA piece, and the real fundamental question, you sort of answered it, but how can engineers tell better stories?
How can they tell better stories? I think one, this is in no particular order, but a few ideas. One is self-reflection. We spend a lot of time doing. We don't
Yeah.
spend a lot of time journaling, reflecting, thinking. So I think giving yourself that opportunity to think about what's happening and sort of, when in doubt, zoom out. So you can pull
I
yourself
like that.
back. And I mean, there are other people around you too that can give you good feedback on, what's happening in your world and how you're tracking generally. So I think there's that reflection aspect. I think the other thing with story is practice. I mean, the other thing people will always do is if there's an opportunity to speak in front of an audience, they'll run a mile, I'll go home, I'll sit in the corner, play with their phone, whatever. Take those opportunities to get in front of audiences and speak about things that are inherently uniquely you. And you and I would do this all the time. I've been around a while, but it's not it's not presenting corporate fluff. It's about telling people who you are, what you think, and why you think that. It's like a conversation you have with your mates instead of dressed up in a corporate sense. I mean, politicians, as we know, they're really good at that. They can talk for an hour and say nothing. Whereas as a professional engineer, if you can talk for an hour about the things that affected you, how it changed you, what moved you, what you learned from that, they're the riveting ones. And I've always been critical of a lot of technical presentations where you sit there and it's just like, kill me now. Like they're 7 minutes in
Yeah.
and you just want to leave. Make it interesting. When
Yeah.
you're presenting, you've got to make it entertaining, you've got to make it interesting, and you've got to make it educational or informative. You have a responsibility to that audience to entertain, inform, and educate. Otherwise, why would they turn up
Yeah.
and give away an hour of their life they'll never get back? So I think it's
Yeah.
about self-reflection. It's clearly about practicing these things, but it's about the experiences that you as a professional are putting yourself in. Because you think about, if you go and see someone speak and you go, that's the most amazing thing in the world. People are furiously writing down. Those people have generally got good stories to tell, haven't they?
Yes.
Well, we go and see all the entrepreneurs, right? They've got these amazing stories, whereas someone else will get up there and say, oh, yeah, I drove to work for 20 years and did the same thing. Now, people are probably not going to pay for that.
Boring.
Yeah, check. So what's interesting? The interesting life equals the interesting story. So carve that out. So be deliberate and conscious about the choices that you're making. And as I said before, I think a really good way to do that is to blow your life up from time to time. You get 4,000 weeks. You'll see this on a lot of LinkedIn posts and
Yep.
mine. You get 4,000 weeks. That's it.
Yep.
If you're lucky, if you're really lucky.
Yeah.
So the clock is ticking. And the worst that someone's going to say is no. That's the worst thing that can happen. Right. So.
Well, I tell you what, I'm inspired. I'm currently thinking about all the things that I need to do. I always think about all the things that I've done And I think as a young engineer, a young professional, to be able to just say yes a bit more and to try those new things, move overseas, move interstate, whatever it might be, very much a big advocate of that. But yeah, I mean, very, very well rounded in terms of response. And, I agree. I think engineers are usually too tech heavy. And yes, they do need to be very technical, but it's like, Feynman, or it's, you know, explaining engineering to my 5-year-old. How do you break things down so people can understand them and turn them into fun things so that they're remembered? Because I often find that it's the one who, it's not the most technical, it's not that presentation about the bridge or whatever it might be, but it's what people remember that will change the future.
Oh,
So,
I agree with you, Darren. I think there's a helpful indicator here too. A couple of things I'd add to that. One is the people that we remember invariably have taken risks. If you live a risk-averse life, it will be a very boring beige life.
mm,
That doesn't mean you have to climb Everest or base jump. I mean, if that's your thing, that's fine too.
yeah,
But people that we remember, the stories that we hear that resonate, people have always taken risk. So take more risk would be my message to young professionals, guaranteed. The other one is, and you and I both know this, in professional life, there are some really good people and there are a lot of duds. So as a young person, you land in a team. If you've got a great leader, then you're going to fly, you're going to flourish. If you've got a dud, then that will be reflected in the team around you as well. So I always encourage young professionals, you've got to find who the good people are and get on their team.
yeah,
So, that's critically important at a young stage. That's something that I was very fortunate to have happen to me. And it's made all the difference. I've also worked in teams with duds as well. And I'm not pretending I'm the perfect human being either. So,
sure.
but finding the right people, the people that see the good in you, but more importantly, the potential in you, and will do something with that, they are rare. Corporate life
Mm,
is very competitive, and it's basically about me. So it can be hard and it can be isolating, but there are good people out there and it's not that hard to find them. So make it your life's journey to surround yourself with great people that will push you, test you. And that's the other way of making the magic happen.
yeah, I mean, I had a note here about, connecting leaders to young professionals. You talked about sponsorship, not mentorship. What should young people be looking for in a great leader?
I think there's a few things. One is lots of scar tissue. Great leaders have stuffed a lot of things up, and I put myself in that camp as well. Um, You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like they really, there's too many of them just blow their own trumpets and they're amazing and it's hard work that got them everywhere, which is just laughable. Melinda Gates said this, anyone that's got anywhere, someone helped them get there.
Yeah.
So I think all of us that have got a bit of seniority, a bit of experience under our belts and have blown things up and stuffed things up, we've got a responsibility to help others get there too. So the reason I'm big on sponsorship is sponsors open doors. Mentors are well-meaning, but sponsors can actually open doors. And if you're going to go anywhere in life, you need doors open for you. I mean, you've got to do the work. Don't get me wrong. There's no proxy for doing the hard work, but people that believe in you will open doors for you. And that's how the best careers are actually built, on the back of those relationships. So it is about finding people that, as I said, have done it before, have got the scar tissue, but are prepared to invest the time and are
Mm,
not well-meaning. Like I said, there's a lot of people in corporate life that I talk about who state the obvious for a living. If you increase your revenue and decrease your costs, your profit margin will increase. Really, I would never have thought that. Or
uh,
if we look after our people and build a great culture, people will want to stay. Really, I would never have thought that. So
yep.
there's a lot of people state the obvious for a living. Steer clear of them. Stay away from the fluff, gravitate to the content. And the content is not always at the top. There's this natural assumption when you're young that someone in an executive position is smart, amazing, and nothing could be further from the truth. There are people that are smart and amazing at very senior levels, and there are people that are dumb and stupid at very senior levels.
Yeah.
And you might ask yourself, well, how do they get there? And as I always say, don't worry about that. You'll never, ever resolve it. So forget about how they got there. Just make sure that you surround yourself with the alternative camp, people that are full of content, got lots of scar tissue, and recognize that they didn't get there by themselves, that others helped them and are prepared to invest in you. And they are there. It is your job to find them. So I think they're the three characteristics I define as great leaders.
Yeah, no,
No,
I love that. And I think the one thing that, and I sort of flip it back to, what you're talking about is to be able to find a leader that would invest in you. How do you think you could get someone to invest in you? Like, I look at it and go, yes, you're interested, you're interesting, you're, trying to punch out the lights, you're always trying to come up with stuff. Of course, there's so many layers, but if you peel back all of those, is it just like minds? Is it just you like footy and they like footy? Like, how do you break it down so, yes, you found the leader, yes, you love working with them, they're the one, they've got the scar tissue, they've got all the things, but then how do you flip it so that leader then goes, you know what, I'm going to invest in you so that you can become the next leader?
Yeah, that's a really, really interesting point. I've actually thought about that. We didn't rehearse this, by the way, Ron.
No, of
That's
course
a
not.
really, really interesting point. I think the thing is, you need to be worthy of their time. You need to demonstrate to them that you are worthy of them investing time in you. I'll come back to that in a second.
Yeah.
The number one point I want to make, firstly, though, is most senior people never get approached by junior people. Never. So I encourage everyone that's starting out or in the early stages of career to reach out to people that are senior.
Yeah.
No one ever does it. So when people, and senior people want to help, but they don't get asked. So ask.
Yes. Yeah.
Don't ask, it always equals don't get. So ask them. You'll be surprised at how many senior people will give you their time. Right, now you've got their time. The other thing a lot of people do is when they get into these conversations, you probably know this yourself too, people just sit there with a silly grin on their face or laugh. It's a nervous laugh that always happens at the end of things. When you go and meet with senior people, they don't have a lot of time. They're not thinking about you so much. They've got a million things on their mind. So you've got to make the most of that. So you've got to go in prepared. You've got to know about them. You've got to research them. And you've got to know what you want to ask of them. And you need to leave with a call to action or an ask of them too. So don't waste your time just having a general chat. If you're interested in civil engineering, for example, it might be geotech or structures or whatever, and you're talking with someone, then ask them if they know anyone that they could introduce you to that you could learn more about X, whatever that happened to be. So be very specific about that. The other thing it's always really important to do is introduce into the conversation the things that you are doing that make you worthy of their time. So for example, we've talked about posting stuff on LinkedIn. Well, if you've got a series of LinkedIn posts sharing a journey on some design that you've created or whatever, let them know about it. That will differentiate you from everyone else that just sits in the background and turns up every day and does the same thing for 20 years. So it's important that people know what you're doing, how you're pushing harder, and how you're differentiating yourself from the herd. That's critically important. So I think doing things that make you worthy of investment, and that will be self-development, that will be things like private study, that'll be going to stuff, that'll be speaking at things. It's no one thing you're going to do. It's all of these things added up together that will make you an industry luminary. And someone senior will go, yeah, Darren is just the guy that I want to lean into because he's doing it off his own back. He's actually doing it, and I can see it. I can touch it. I can watch it. I can feel it. All these things add up, and consistency compounds. And as engineers, we know there's this thing called exponential growth. So for a lot of years, and talk to Jeff Bezos about Amazon's profits for a lot of years, nothing happens. And then all of a sudden, this does. And people give up here when it flatlines.
Yeah. Well, I again, you know, so bang on about it's not just one thing, it's a multitude of things. And also, it's not just the work thing, it's the extracurricular things and how they stack, how they, you know, touch on what a leader is looking for. And, you know, thank you. I do hope that, you know, someone out there is looking for someone like me. You know, offer me a job. I'm always open, always open. I'm not going to say no. And I'm always happy to chat. And I think the funny thing too is someone actually, I just on this, someone said to me the other day, like, oh, you know, I'm looking for a mentor. You know, oh, I guess you've, you know, you've got to a point in your career where, you know, you don't need a mentor anymore. And I said, well, no, no, I have mentors. I have mentors I work with. I've got coaches. I work with so many different people. I've got mentors all around me, and I'm always looking for more. Always. I'm always looking for more leaders. I'm always looking for more mentors. And openly, some of those I need to pitch to actually take me on.
Yeah.
And I think that never ends. And that's what I say to the mentees or students I work with. It's always, you're always going to be looking for more. You're always going to need more advice. You'll never know it all. You'll never get to this precipice of your career where I know everything and I don't need anyone anymore. You'll never get there. And I always tell them, you're right. If it is that consistency that's going to get you there, it will just continue to compound and compound as you get through your career. So highly sage advice.
Absolute pleasure. I'll wrap it up this way. If you want to finish up like most people, just do what most people do. So look around you and see what most people do. Just do that and you'll finish up like most people.
Yeah.
If you don't want to finish up like most people, then do the opposite of what most people do. And that's as an engineer, that's pretty easy to do, right? It's just 180. Do the opposite of what most people do and watch your life explode.
I love that. You know, I've got so many more questions, but you know, I don't think I could even come back from that. Because that is, like, to be honest, a very sound final statement from you, Mark. And look, I've got so much out of that. It was an amazing conversation. I'm looking forward to replaying it. I've got some nuggets. I've learned new terminology. I'm going to start talking about signals now. So thank you. And mate, that's absolute pleasure. What a ride. Thank you so much.
Not at all, Darren. Thank you so much for the opportunity. As I said, I think what you're doing, pushing people down this entrepreneurial path in a very nice way, nudging, I think we call it, is a very powerful thing. I think the beauty of the world as we know it, as I said, there are no rules and the opportunities are infinite. And when I graduated, that wasn't the case. It was a very linear path. It was very hierarchical. It was very structured and it was predetermined. As I said, now the choice is yours. So go do it. Blow the doors off. So it's been an absolute pleasure to join you. Thank you so much. And look forward to watching you continue your meteoric rise on LinkedIn and social platforms.
Thank you so much, Mark. Really appreciate it. Can't wait to talk again.
Thanks, Darren.
Thanking you.
Cheers, mate. Bye.
Thanks so much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed that podcast. Please like and subscribe. It helps us reach so many more aspiring engineering professionals and entrepreneurs. You can find us on LinkedIn, Spotify, and YouTube.